Right, 11:17, Fred Buc back on Retro Lightning, and our weekly feature, Then and Now, that we do each Saturday around 11:20, pulling out two tunes by the same band or artist. Play the first one back then in the feature year, 1979 today, and follow it up with the same band or artist now, in present day. And our weekly Then and Now feature is expanded today just a little bit because I'm very happy to bring in a special guest on Then and Now for Retro Lightning, J.D. Souther in the studio.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Nice for you to come in on this brisk Saturday.
It is a crispy day.
Yes, it is.
It's a little rainy. It's what they call in Ireland a dirty day.
Well, I'm excited because you've got a show coming up at the Belcourt Theater this Wednesday night. It's going to be a great show and a chance to see some great music and a great writer in action. Get your tickets at belcourt.org or selloutpresents.com. So
and a great band, too. And we're going to be recording the show. This is going to be a record.
Oh, so. Fantastic. Even more reason to come out. Yeah, we're going to talk about the band here in just a bit.
Great.
Being that this is Retro Lightning and we kind of stuck in the past, as it were, I'm gonna let you rewind your brain a little bit. And let's go back.
Guess. Do an old song of mine.
Well, not that old, but I want to go back even. I want to go back even further than. That's old. Before 1979, you were kind of doing some stuff well before that, even in the early 70s. So,
yes.
I just want you to kind of just give us a little summary of how it all got started in Southern California.
I have no idea because I grew up in Texas, but I started playing music when I was 11. So, but I moved to California, I think I was 21 or 22. I had never even held a guitar then. I was a drummer and a sax player. And I think probably until I heard Ray Charles and Chet Baker and then the rockabilly guys from Texas, Buddy Holly and Orbison and Waylon, those guys, I really didn't have that much affection for singers. I was a player. I was completely in the thrall of Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Horace Silver and Wayne Shorter. Still am. I think Wayne Shorter is the living giant of music. He was making music with Miles in the 50s, and he's still making music. So that's a pretty good span. But California, I moved there. I moved to New York, moved to California, settled in California because it was warmer. The girls had less clothing on. And there was a lot of guys playing and girls playing very interesting kind of combination of traditional country music and this kind of whatever hippie rock and roll music we'd inherited from the 60s. And one of the guys in my band left an acoustic guitar in my apartment, unattended, carelessly. And I just found a home on it. And it was a time when I wanted to write songs. I'd been writing poetry for a long time. And although a poem and a song don't necessarily have the same requirements, that's sort of where I moved out of being an out-of-work jazz drummer into being whatever they were calling me then. Somebody called me the Oscar Wilde of the New West, which I thought was my favorite.
Yeah. Now, you obviously were, of course, your fans know who, you ran around with in Southern California, but Glenn Frey, Linda Ronstadt, that whole bunch, were all kind of in the same boat at the same time, weren't you all?
Broke is the word.
Broke, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and Don Henley and my great friend Warren Zevon and a fabulous writer named Judy Sill, who passed away a few years ago, but was at the time when we all first signed to Asylum Records, she was the best songwriter among us by far. She's a really remarkable musician, and I loved her, and she had great influence on me. And but we were all broke. We were all playing open mic nights, and I think that's the level that we just found ourselves at. And the nexus of all of that in Southern California was the Troubadour. And even though none of us were from Southern California except Jackson, we were all from all over the country. That's where we went to learn and to listen. And I think the year 1969 was really kind of our graduating class, because that year at the Troubadour we saw practically every good American songwriter, and we saw Laura Nyro and James Taylor and Joni Mitchell, and
wow,
I got Tim Hardin, Elton John, the Burrito Brothers, Poco, Carole King. It was just a school of songwriting. And then we all listened closely to each other, Zevon and Jackson and Judy Sill and I and Glenn. And then we met Don. Don had come with a band called Shiloh from Texas. And then I met Waddy Wachtel, who was my go-to guitar gun for years when I had guitar bands. And we all just sort of learned together. And frankly, and not to leave out Linda Ronstadt, who was an enormous influence in the scene, even though she didn't write songs very often. She was a great song picker and plugger. She had a fabulous ear for songs, whether it was Zevon or Jackson or me or Lowell George. She just knew what songs worked. And actually the first 2 or 3 really good songs I wrote, where I thought I'd jumped from aspiring amateur to real songwriter, was when she and I were together, because I think her ear was so fantastic and so finely tuned. She had what jazz musicians call big ears. She just heard it.
Well, you certainly played off of each other's talents back in that era, because all of those names, great notables, whether they made it for themselves or somewhere in the music world, are all names that we'll never forget.
And all from different disciplines. I mean, Glenn Frey brought this sort of Midwest rock and roll. He knew everything about Motown and the Philadelphia music. Henley brought Texas blues in spades. He just had tons and tons of blues in him, and that magnificent voice. Linda had a really broad musical knowledge and taught me a ton about country music. She played me the Louvin Brothers and Stanley Brothers and all that stuff. Zevon came from classical music. He'd studied with Stravinsky. I came from jazz, because I had been a tenor player and a drummer, and I told you, I was completely in love with small group jazz. And all of it together just made for this mix of people that were, like any group of young friends, we're trying to outdo each other, trying to show each other how good we are. And the standards are pretty high. I mean, you didn't get by with very much in that group.
Well, I know we're kind of limited on time. I could sit here and talk to you for about 2 hours on the air about this, but I want to fast forward through some eras here. Obviously, that was early mid-'70s, and then there was the era which I really enjoyed, the Souther Hillman Fury band era in the mid-'70s. Was great. Black Rose, then in '76, he was a solo artist there.
It was a pretty ambitious album. That was my favorite record until this one of mine. I think I had 2 great enablers in music. Peter Asher and Jackson Brown, and Linda always encouraged me to go for the wall. I just think of something crazy to do, like I want to do a song with just me and Stanley Clarke playing upright bass, and Peter Asher would just say, "Oh, well then call him." I'd think, me call Stanley Clarke? Call him, and he'd go, "Okay, I'll come down." Or Donald Byrd to come down and play, trumpet on something or flugelhorn on something, and Peter would just say, "Call him." That's all right. Sure enough, these fabulous guys would come down and play, and those 3 people have always been great enablers and supporters of what would you call it? What Angelica Houston calls artist reinvention, which is just to keep stretching the boundaries a little bit.
Which you continue to do.
I hope so.
Yeah, well, now let's move ahead to 1979, since that's our feature year today on Retro Lightning.